Welcome back to Business and Politics. We're talking to Secretary Pangandaman. Secretary, you're talking about reforms before we took a break. What's of course in the news was PSDBM, the issues there with the procurement. And of course, that by extension, there are concerns about, of course, corruption and efficiencies in government. Could you talk about what your directive is, what you're doing now to maybe are you looking to reform it? Are you looking to keep it? What's the general directive you have?
Again, it's digitalization, it's the use of technology.
Okay.
It's to maximize the use of technology, just to be able to ensure that all transactions are transparent.
Okay.
And then I am lucky enough to put an able executive director in PSDBM who's been doing a lot of reforms in PSDBM. So I hope that this will all be able to. We'll be able to put a good name again to the.
So you're saying
office.
that the transparency efforts that you're doing, the digitalization, that's the solution. You're saying is that I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yes.
But is that the correct? That's the
much of it will really.
That's the move
really
that you're
solve,
making.
yes.
Okay. Is DBM also looking to reconcile some of the seemingly incongruent policies in terms of procurement? Because I've heard of some departments complaining about there's a directive, I think Volume 5, I'm not familiar with it, that compels them to buy at bulk, to save on the unit cost, right?
Common use supply.
Yes, and yet there is, of course, the Magna Carta for MSMEs that compels government agencies to spend 10% of their budgets on MSMEs, and that you don't get scale there. Are you looking at those kinds of policies to see how it can be harmonized so to be more efficient, and at least it will be clear for everyone from the national government down to LGUs on how to procure things?
Yeah, maybe by mid of this year, we'll be able to release procurement amendments to the procurement to the Government Procurement Reform Act. The GPRA is already 20 years, I think.
Oh, okay.
So
it's due for updating.
It's really high time to amend. And I hear a lot of concerns from the national government and even from our legislators that maybe you should look into it, and then let's file an amendment, perhaps, just to make it more efficient with what's happening now. So that's what we're gonna do. There's an ongoing consultation now with our GPPB, that's Government Procurement Policy Board. So hopefully by mid of this year, we'll be able to present something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, something I get to look forward to.
Yes.
In terms of public spending, of course, we also hear about the Maharlika Fund, right? The intent, I believe, there is to have a pool of funds that the government can use to invest and earn. Earlier, we were talking about it. You were asking my opinion, but it's hard for me to comment because things are the bill is still making its way through Congress. We're not even certain, what the final bill will look at. But how is it looking to you so far? What is the development on? I know that there's been some dialogue between the executive department and the Senate, at least. What's your feedback?
For the DBM's end, the legislation itself, the Maharlika Fund, any reform or effort of the national government or even the legislators for that matter that will help us have enough fiscal space is in good news for the Department of Department of Budget and Management. That's why we're happy when we introduce that the Maharlika Fund. So what's nice about the bill is that when we presented the bill to the House of Representatives, there were some issues involved in it. They don't want GSIS and then the pension funds, they don't want to be part of it. So they removed it. And now they passed it, and now it's in the Senate. Yesterday, we had a hearing in the Senate, chaired by Senator Mark Villar. What's important to note during the hearing that most of the comments there were constructive.
Okay.
So
what are some of those that you can share publicly?
I think one of the reforms that they wanted to look into it is that I think it was Jesus Cordero who said that maybe the directors can go to the process of the GCG,
What's the GCG?
the government governance commission for GOCCs.
Okay.
So I think for me that's okay because we already have that. I mean, all the directors for the government owned controlled corporation goes through there, and then they send it to the president. There's a short list of names. I think that's a good suggestion from Senator Jesus Cordero, and Senator Sani Angara mentioned about competition from the private sector because there are so many, they were saying there's so many incentives for the Maharlika Investment Corporation. So maybe we can look also into that. And there's a lot more. They mentioned about looking at the best practices of other countries who has sovereign wealth funds. So it's always nice that this measure is a legislation. Otherwise, I like to echo Sec Ben, he mentioned, it's a good thing it's not an executive order, right? So it's in legislation. So we have time to consult all the stakeholders and there. So hopefully by June they'll be able to pass the bill.
Well, you mentioned Senator Escudero. I was monitoring the news. His word for it is hilaw. Is that a fair comment to make, or is that out of context from what you've heard from him?
Maybe it's not hilaw, but it needs a little more tweaking, or there's room for improvement.
Right. You were also talking about, on this subject, you're also mentioning the Santiago principles, right? And these are the generally accepted principles for managing wealth funds. One of the things in those set of principles is a clarity in the purpose. But has that been determined? Because things, I think, from what I understand, are still fluid. I mean, has that been determined? What the purpose will be? What will be? Where can it invest, for example?
From my end,
can it invest abroad, or should it just invest in the Philippines, or has that been determined?
It can invest in the Philippines. It can also invest abroad. But for me, from my end, it's a development fund.
Okay.
It will fund big ticket
Yeah.
items, big infrastructure projects of the national government.
So
imagine we are spending more than 1 trillion, more than a trillion of our budget for infrastructure.
Okay.
Imagine just 20% of that.
Okay.
You carve it out,
Right.
and then Maharlika will take on that.
Right.
So that amount, I can use that amount for social sector, for human capital development. And for me, that's important.
Yeah.
That's important.
But that's the point that I was trying to make, Secretary, and pardon me for pointing it out. That is it solely for big ticket items, or as you said, is it also for some social amelioration?
No, it's only for big ticket items.
Okay, all right.
With big returns.
Okay, so
Because it's a business.
It can't be for dole out. That's clear.
No,
Okay.
it cannot.
Because there were some comments about that.
Leave that to the government.
Okay. You said it can invest abroad, it can invest locally. Bottom line, it earns money.
Yes.
But the assumption there is that the wealth fund earns.
Yeah.
Right? And as we know from investments, some investments earn, some investments lose, right? That was certainly true for wealth funds last year. Why is there such a mindset that there's only one outcome possible? I mean, no one seems to be entertaining the possibility that investments can lose money.
No naman.
Okay.
I don't think so. Maybe because we're really just optimistic that this vehicle will be able to
If it's managed
what we
well,
need, yeah.
right?
We need good people to manage
Right.
it. And then we have enough safeguards. They mentioned about 8 safeguards that is present in the bill
Right.
now. So maybe let's respect that.
Okay. Now, in investments, and I'm not an expert in this, but from what I've heard from people, when you invest, sometimes you would lose 70% of your investment funds, but the 30% of your investments that earn will be more than enough. But do you think that, given that possible scenario, do you think we're ready for the political fallout if something like that happens? I mean, how do we keep the public from being jittery, right? When in some investments will lose, right? I mean, at the end of the year, when you do your final accounting, you'll end up with a positive balance sheet still, right? But how do you plan to maybe address that? And, because, some heads could roll if things turn quickly south, right? And, and the world is very volatile these days.
But yesterday it was discussed during the Senate hearing. If you'll notice, of course, during bad times, you have the Asian financial crisis, the global crisis, and then the pandemic. Some of the investments will really fall.
Right.
Yeah. So, but then when times are really good,
that's the nature.
That's the nature. But when times are really good, it's giving enough funds for the sovereign wealth fund. So I think, and then what we're saying is that maybe let's just pick the best people for the fund, and then we have enough safeguards. Get the best fund managers that we have there. We have a lot of Filipinos who are working abroad who can be part of the team of the Maharlika Corporation. Oh, let's just give it a try. I'm sure it will help us.
I'll press you a bit if you don't mind, Secretary. Right? I was talking to on this program Secretary Bobby D. Ocampo, and he was saying that maybe, well, he did say generally that it should be looked at, right? He wasn't totally against it. But one of the things that came out of that discussion was, why don't we use, say, the existing institutions like maybe DBP, Land Bank, instead of creating this other engine or this other office, right? That essentially can be done by something that already exists.
I think you will have to amend their charters as well. Their charters as well.
So that's also problematic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. We'll be back with Secretary Pangandaman. This is Business and Politics. Please stay tuned.